champions. I'm Amy Morgan with the Marriage Initiative, and I'm just delighted to introduce Dr. Tim Muelhoff to you today. Tim's a professor of communication at Biola University in California, where he teaches on topics of conflict resolution and family communication. He is the co-director and co-host of the podcast for the Winsome Conviction Project, which brings people with differing viewpoints together to reintroduce compassion and civility into conversations. He wrote Marriage Forecasting, Changing the Climate of Your Relationship, One Conversation at a Time in 2010 from his doctoral research to explain how communication techniques can help couples reduce conflict. In his recent book, End the Stalemate, Move Past Cancel Culture to Meaningful Conversations, Tim and co-author Sean McDowell speak to the nature of current cultural divides. He also wrote Defending Your Marriage, The Reality of Spiritual Battle, to help couples understand and combat spiritual warfare in their marriage. Tim and his wife, Noreen, have spoken with Family Life at their marriage conferences and seminars for more than 30 years. Tim, thank you so much for being here.
Amy, it's great to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
Well, I'm so fascinated by your work. Let's start with your history, how your doctoral research led to your marriage forecasting book for our marriage champions, but it actually started even with relationships before marriage, correct? It was not even, family relationships at all.
Yeah, I was on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ and right outside of UNC Chapel Hill. So we were studying communication. How do you take the Christian worldview and make it relevant, and how do you handle people who really would disagree with the Christian perspective? So I bopped over to UNC Chapel Hill, did a master's in communication, and while I was there, a culture war broke out between the gay community and between really conservative Christian groups on campus. So a professor came up to me, this was my second year at UNC Chapel Hill, and said, "You're a Christian, we can do better. We can do better than people just yelling at each other." So it started there with 3 self-identifying members of the gay community in Chapel Hill and 3 members of a really conservative Christian group. And I basically said to them, let's talk about our differences. We'll do that in week 7.
Yeah.
Give them 6 weeks to give us the communication tools to do that. Because if we would have started with the differences, we already know how it would have went. It was all over local news that the 2 groups were really going at each other, saying really inflammatory things. So we did that for 6 weeks. We taught people how to do perspective taking, empathy, curiosity, intellectual humility. So once that was done, my doctoral dissertation director said to me, "Hey, you and Noreen speak at marriage conferences. Let's take everything we just learned and applied it to marriage when couples would say, hey, we're stuck. Yeah. Like we try to resolve this issue, and the more we talk about it, the worse it gets." So we took all that information from the culture war and applied it to marital relationships, studying 2 couples that were in what we would call gridlock. We cannot resolve this on our own.
Yeah, it's so interesting. I was telling some people today at the gym that I was going to be talking to you, and I was like, everything you say makes so much sense. I mean, I can be at the gym and they may be participating in some things that are not my thing, but you know what? I can still be super friendly with everyone at the gym and have this great relationship without having to have it be contentious. And that just is so interesting how you've developed that you call that improving the climate, right? Yeah. Can we talk about that a little bit more? Because I love it. It was so clever how you use that in your book, Marriage Forecasting, how to improve the climate.
Well, so that all came from my graduate education, this idea of a climate. Yeah. So right now it's pretty nice outside, but let's say the heat index was 115. Now, could I go for a run? The answer is yes, but it's not going to be pleasant, and it might not even be safe. So you just can't ignore the climate outside your door. Well, we know that as soon as 2 people start talking, a communication climate develops that is just as real as anything outside your door. So can you have a conversation when it's 115 in the marriage? It's not going to go well. So we should try to improve the climate. And by climate, we mean four very simple ideas. One, what are the expectations you have of your spouse? And do you feel like those expectations are being met? Second, do you fundamentally trust your spouse? Do you trust that they're being honest with you? Do you
Yeah.
trust that they care about the marriage? They care about you? Third would be acknowledgement. I don't need to agree with you on everything, but I at least acknowledge your perspective and the weight of that perspective. And then last, commitment. Do I believe you're committed to the marriage, even if we have ups and downs, which of course, every couple does, but am I committed that we're in this for the long haul? Because if that commitment part is lacking, that communication climate is not as strong as it could be. And so our goal is to improve the climate. It will never be perfect, but improve the climate as much as possible to have hard conversations.
And that run at 65 degrees and not raining. As a runner, I'm like, oh, that's the perfect climate, right?
Right.
But let's talk about how you improve that. You talked about those four ways, and you said you had studied, one couple that was really having a concern about their child. And I'm not sure if I'm assuming it's published.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Yeah.
That's fair to include. But how can a couple, improve those things if some of that climate, the temperature is not quite right?
Okay, so this is such a good one because the first one is what are my expectations? Okay, so this child is being bullied at school. Okay, what are the expectations of the mom and what are the expectations of the dad? Now, I'm not saying one is right over the other, but it's really good to verbalize expectations. Like the mom's expectation was, hey, mama bear showing up.
Yeah.
Like we're protecting this child and we're stepping in. We're going to make an appointment with the principal. This is going to end today. Okay. The dad, of course, loves his son, but listen, he needs to become a man. He needs to grow through this. If we keep rushing in and saving him, it's really going to backfire. Now, both of those are valid perspectives, but when they articulated it to each other, what I wanted them to focus on, you both love your child, right? You both absolutely love your child. And you're having a disagreement of what that love looks like in action.
Yeah.
That was the very first thing. And then we could do the commitment part is we're both committed to our child and we're committed to each other that we're going to find an equitable solution. Like it's not me running off to the principal tomorrow with you saying, no, I don't think that's a great idea. That's the acknowledgement part.
Yeah.
I mean, can they both sit down and say, okay, I don't agree, but I can see where you're coming from. And I do think there's some validity in what you're saying.
Yeah.
Do you see how the climate is being shifted?
Yeah.
Now, if the husband were to say, well, that's ridiculous.
Yeah.
We can't step in every time he's facing challenge. That is just ridiculous. Well, that's the acknowledgement part, and the climate just took a hit.
Yeah.
So it is kind of funny once you get these categories, it is kind of, and in the book, of course, I give a bunch of surveys. Couples can ask themselves, because who knows where the climate is?
Yeah.
I assume we're doing well, but maybe when this came up, maybe we're not doing as well as I thought we were, but then what's not doing well?
Yeah.
Let's not paint with a broad brush and say, well, the marriage is an absolute mess. No. You're having a climate issue. And my wife likes to point out, weather is not climate. Like generally speaking, we have great climate in California, but we get rain.
Yeah.
But the rain is weather. The climate is pretty stable. We just get thunderstorms every once in a while. So don't confuse if you're going through a rough patch, oh, the whole climate is bad. It might be that you're just having a weather pattern that's causing some turbulence.
I love that. That is so concrete, and what a great analogy. That really helps put it in perspective. And I love too that you brought up Noreen, because you guys have been speakers for Family Life for 30 years.
Yes.
How did you get started doing that?
Well, first, let me just say there's nothing easier than fixing somebody else's marriage. So, well, we were on staff with Campus Crusade for Christ, weren't even dating. And Noreen got this crazy idea. Let's go to some sororities and let's do the male-female perspective of dating. So,
Wow.
Amy, I was elected to represent all men. Well, I
You're
said,
Adam. You were the new Adam.
yes, I am the representative. But you know what? Honestly, we weren't even dating, but we had a blast.
Oh.
And that was really the inkling I had. Like, okay, I don't know if it's Noreen, but I want to have a ministry with my wife. Like, I want to be doing this kind of stuff. And then things slowly progressed. We hadn't been married very long, and they wanted really, really young couples. And so they asked me and Noreen, and I think we had like two really small kids. So
Oh.
we were originally the hip, cool young couple. Now we're the stately, wise couple without hair and 3 adult children.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. 30 years later. Well, what is the topic? I mean, I've been to the family life several times. I love those weekends to remember. What I know each, couple that speaks kind of has their lane. So
Yeah.
what is you and Noreen's lane?
Well, the conferences are kind of been put together by a bunch of different authors. So there is a template.
Yes.
And we simply start with a theology of marriage. Why did God create marriage? Sometimes I think we forget that God had a very specific purpose for this thing called marriage. And it might really go counter to what the American pop culture would say is the purpose of marriage.
Yeah.
So I think having a theology of marriage is really important. And then you get the rank and file talks on forgiveness, conflict resolution, listening. But then here's what sets us apart a little bit is we're not ashamed to say, if this is a Christian marriage, you have an adversary. Mm-hmm. And the adversary isn't merely secular culture. You have an actual adversary that the Bible is not ashamed to say is the devil. I mean, 25% of everything Jesus said had to do with spiritual battle. So if you're a Christian wanting to have a marriage that honors Christ, then I think the Apostle Paul would say, well, then you're under attack.
Yeah.
Because demons would not want you to have a healthy Christ-centered marriage. And so I actually wrote a book on this called Defending Your Marriage. And Amy, it was so funny, people's reaction. Yeah. Like, wait, you're writing a book on what?
Yeah.
Like on demons?
Oh, really? Yeah.
I had a friend say to me, no, I don't think this is good for like your publishing trajectory. Like, you don't want to be the devil guy. Yeah. And I kind of wrestled with that a little bit. And then I thought, wait a minute, am I embarrassed by 25% of everything Jesus had to say? John goes so far as to say the whole world lies in the power of the evil one. Yeah. So we better understand that Christian marriage is not, as one of my friends says, not on a romantic balcony, it's on a spiritual battlefield. Yeah. And once you realize that, it changes how you think about your marriage.
Yeah. Well, and that I love that. And I'm glad you brought up your book, because that's where I was going to go with. And I think you had said too, that one of the ways you really realized personally how very real that was when you brought up your 2 little kids was like every time you'd be ready to go to speak or whatever, someone would have to go to the hospital or some, the amount of obstacles every time you were about to do good.
Yeah. Kids would always get sick. Noreen and I, listen, just because we speak at marriage conferences doesn't mean we're not having issues. You know what I mean? I mean, we joke with the conference. We say, how many of you had an argument on the way to the conference? And people raise their hand. Then we like to say, how many of you had an argument on the way to speak at the conference? And of course, that's happening. So we got to a conference after we were in the midst of a disagreement. Well, guess what? Family life still needs you to be in that city at that hotel to speak. So we get there early for the tech rehearsal, and I see volunteers standing in front of every chair, and they're obviously praying. So I asked the program director, hey, what are they doing? He said, oh, we're praying against spiritual attack for every person that's going to sit in that seat. And Amy, it was like a mind-blowing moment. Do I take this seriously?
Yeah.
And obviously, we really hadn't.
Yeah.
Like, we were thinking, oh, we're just having a disagreement. The kids just happened to get sick. Never once did it occur to me that if Satan was going after people attending the conference, then of course he would go after people speaking or trying to host the conference.
Yeah. Having sat in those seats myself more than once, the thought, even now, that I was being prayed over as I was sitting there
Yeah.
before in preparation, I mean, that makes me tear up because you
Yeah.
really think how important that is
Yep.
to address that. So you recognize that at family life and when you talk, but then also it was kind of the impetus for your book. But you said again that was kind of a minefield of a subject because you explain a little bit more about the Western world and how we're just not super into spiritual warfare.
Well, so we're products of the Enlightenment, which means in the West, we primarily think the most important thing about a person is your intelligence. It's
Mm,
that we want to have clear, rational thinking.
yeah,
That's the Enlightenment. So I think Satan deals differently with different parts of the world.
yeah.
So when he gets to the West, he makes himself to look ridiculous. Like,
Mhm.
like, like I love what you did, the horns, the red
Yes,
underwear. He loves to make himself cartoonish because people in the West are like, well, how can you take that seriously?
yeah.
Now, in other parts of the world, they take it incredibly seriously. So let me I get asked this question all the time. What's the difference between the ancient church and the modern church? Okay, the ancient church would say, listen, you're a Christian, you are under spiritual attack. Like it's the biggest no-brainer in the world. Paul in Ephesians, which in the original letter had no chapter breaks
Right.
because we added the chapter breaks in the verses, right, for reference. So when you read it in the original, he talks about what we would say chapter 5, marriage,
Yeah.
and then it bleeds seamlessly into chapter 6, which is get dressed in the armor of God.
Yeah.
So I think Paul would say to both of us, if he were here, wait a minute, tell me what you two are doing right now. Oh, it's a Christian program promoting Christian marriage. Apostle Paul, you're both under spiritual attack.
Yeah.
Like that's the biggest no-brainer in the world. The modern church, I think they would say, well, yeah, maybe you're under attack, but you're going to have to really prove that to me.
Your Wi-Fi just went out.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah.
There's nothing more to that. Your Wi-Fi is just blinky today.
Or that disagreement you have with your spouse, a disagreement with a coworker, a disagreement with a church member. I mean, all of those kind of things is what Paul would mostly focus on. Remember, he says, do not let the sun go down on your anger as not to give the devil a foothold.
Yeah.
See, so it is kind of, I'm glad you brought up Wi-Fi connection because when you do speak and the
Yeah.
Wi-Fi goes out, immediately people go, oh, that's spiritual attack. I bet you Satan's like, listen, I can't even use Wi-Fi without it going on the fritz. Like, don't blame me for Wi-Fi. I think he's much more into, hey, I want you to cop an attitude towards your kids. I want you to cop an attitude towards a neighbor and then let that fester.
Mm.
I think he deals in that area. Now, can he do the big dramatic things? I think he can do the big dramatic things. But then I think he tips us off a little bit that he might be doing those big dramatic things. He would rather deal in the interpersonal aspect, like lack of forgiveness, right?
Mm.
With which people who study spiritual warfare say is the number one way you allow a demon into your marriage is lack of forgiveness. It
Mm.
could be a child, it could be your spouse, it could be a coworker, it could be politics. He doesn't care. I want to get that negative attitude festering because that's how he gets a foothold.
Wow. That is so profound and really something for everyone to think as they soul search about their own relationships and their own heart and their own, where would there be lack of forgiveness? And that's something a little food for thought for us all and our marriage champions. I know as you were putting the book together too, in order to make it really valid and not, tip in any like direction that people might think would be, too far. You read some other things and you kind of created a list of ways that of some spiritual oppression, but you had a very stringent criteria. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so we have to be very careful reading books about spiritual battle. There are exceptional books, and there are books that are really, we would say, on the fringe or beyond the fringe.
Right.
So the recommendations, I got being at the Bible Institute of Los Angeles, Biola, there's just New Testament scholars everywhere. So I grabbed a couple of them and I said, hey, what are the trusted books that I could read? Because I was not an expert in this at all. And I said, give me the books that I really should read. So they gave me these books. I read them. And then I asked the question, okay, wouldn't it be interesting if all of these books mentioned certain signs of the demonic? Yeah. So my criteria was very simple. Every book, and there was about, I think, 15, every book had to mention it for it to go into my power list. Now, there were a bunch of really great things that I think are very beneficial, but all of them didn't mention it. So all you get in my power list, and then I have a footnote of, hey, by the way, here are the other ones that I think we need to be concerned about, but here are the power list. And so my power list was number one, violent dreams. Isn't that crazy? Every single one mentioned these violent dreams where you wake up and your heart's racing.
Wow.
Yeah, another one was catastrophic thinking. Like your mind, every time you and your spouse are going to try to make a decision, your mind goes hyper negative. Like, we can't do this because it'll be the ruin of the family. We can't give this money because then we can't let the kids go on that trip because they could get. And so it's not that you don't have discernment, but it's your mind is consumed by all the negative possibilities that are out there. Then anger, uncontrolled anger.
Yeah.
I go to bed angry at a person. I wake up angry at this person.
Yeah.
Or you think you're okay. You go to church, you see that person. Immediately, there's like a flash of anger and resentment and those kind of things. Then I'll close with two others that were interesting. One is you don't believe the best about God anymore. Like, it used to believe God was for the marriage. You could count on him. But either one big thing happened. Like, we're in a marriage group right now, and boy, this one couple is just going through hardship after hardship after hardship. And after a while, you start to think maybe God's not in the corner. Maybe he's not. So, and then Philip Yancey says it could be 1,000 small things that you start to. So you don't believe God's in your corner. Then the last one, I no longer believe the best about myself. Like, I used to think I think I'm an okay father, a good husband. But after a while, it's shifted where you start to have these thoughts. I'm the worst husband. I'm the worst father. Like, no good Christian father would have yelled at his kids. And that's a demon stepping in, fueling that. Like, yeah, you are. Like, no good Christian husband ever loses his temper. No good Christian mom ever loses her. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, well, then I'm the worst. And I say, anytime you put the worst, you know that's a demon.
Wow.
You know it's a demon because God doesn't view you that way. Now, can we improve in our parenting and how do we handle anger? 100%. But whenever you start to think shameful thoughts about yourself, I think that's clearly a sign of the demonic.
Interesting. So what can a couple do once their eyes are a little opened? They're like, ooh, I am having this weird anger thing going on. What can they do to change that?
Yeah. Buy my book. No, I can't.
I love it.
No. So the cool thing is I came across the work of Charles Kraft, who was a Christian anthropologist. He actually taught at Biola. He's written 20 books on spiritual battle. And he talks about authority prayers. Right
Mm,
now, let me explain very quickly what an authority prayer is because it's really cool. So we know from the book of James that demons exist in hierarchies, right? They call them principalities, is the biblical language. So demons have to respect hierarchies. So when we come using the name of Jesus and invoking hierarchy, demons have to listen. Let me give you for instance. We call these authority prayers. What's my authority? Over Noreen all the time because I'm her husband and she has authority over me as my wife. Over my 3 children, I have complete authority. One child got married. I have authority over my daughter-in-law. I have authority over my students. I have authority when I preach in a church for that day. I have authority. So if you're anybody listening, if you're grandparents, you have authority over all those kids. Parents, you have authority over your kids. Uncles, aunts, you have authority to pray in Jesus's name, and demons have to listen because they exist in a hierarchy. So a warfare prayer would be like, I come in the name of Jesus Christ. I don't come in my name. I come in his authority. As a father, I pray for my 3 boys. Demons, you will stop self-doubt. You will stop them thinking in negative ways. Right? Because I'm the dad. In Jesus's power, I'm praying for those whom I have authority, and demons for that day, which is really wild to think about. That day, they have to stop.
wow.
Now, why that day? Because my best answer is Jesus says, I want you to pray regularly.
Yeah.
So it seems that maybe this prayer lasts longer, but I think Jesus is getting away from this attitude. I'll pray once for my kids and be done. Once
Yeah.
for my spouse, be done. I think it's a more active struggle than that. But those are called authority prayers.
Wow. And you said too, even in your classroom, you prayed with some of your students, right? And that they
No,
were in tears, how much it meant to them.
they burst. First time I did it, Amy, totally took me by surprise. I was like shocked. And I got email after email, and basically they were just saying something's been weighing on me. Like, I'm in therapy. I'm talking to my counselors, my pastor, but something else is in the background. And here's the wild thing, Amy. When I prayed that, students literally said, "I felt a release. I
Wow.
literally felt it." And
Wow.
I wish I had more dramatic answers to prayer, but some of the most dramatic answers I've ever received are warfare prayers, praying for people and praying for myself, and just feeling that this weight leave. Now, it can come back, right? If we harbor that anger, that
Yeah.
resentment, we won't forgive, then Charles Kraft would say, you just unlocked the back door to your house. You
Yeah.
just unlocked it, and demons can walk right back in. And so that's one way to think. It's not the only type of warfare prayer, but I do think it's good for us to think authority wise. Let's take advantage of our authority.
When you talked too about spouses getting dressed in the armor of God together
Yes.
and being battle buddies together. And I like that. I'm sure our marriage champions are, this is opening some eyes and ringing some bells, but thinking about that's another way to partner with your spouse.
Can I jump in on that real quick?
Well,
So
yeah, you're
this,
the expert.
this is the really cool thing about Ephesians. Okay, so Paul is obviously looking at a Roman soldier when he's thinking about the spiritual armor. He mentions a breastplate, helmet, sword, the belt that holds the sword. So we know he's thinking Roman soldier and he's drawing analogies to spiritual warfare. Now, here's what we know about Rome. Rome never fought by themselves. There's no individual soldier running off to do anything. It was always in what they call a cohort, which you fought side by side. That's what made Rome so effective. So I think it is pretty obvious that Paul's saying this thing called marriage, you are now in spiritual battle. And just like a Roman soldier, no way do you get dressed by yourself and run off into battle. You get dressed as a couple, and which means possibly your spouse could be weakening the marriage if they're not walking rightly, and I could be weakening the marriage if I'm not. So that's why I say to my students, be very careful whom you marry.
Yeah.
You're about to marry a person, you're going to do spiritual battle the rest of your life, and you better know that person has your back.
Yeah.
So that's a cool moment with the book of Ephesians is you're getting dressed as a couple, and you both need to know how to get dressed.
Yeah. That's just so interesting. And oh my goodness. And you've got a little bit of, you're doing your podcast with the ending the stalemate and
Yeah.
things with that with Sean McDowell. Do you want to tell us about that just for a minute or two?
So talk about jumping in the fire is the Winsome Conviction Project was started because people were just so concerned that we're losing the ability to talk to each other as Americans. And let me just go back to the first part of the interview. Amy, you better believe our country has a communication climate. I mean, it's a macro climate. And I think all of us are starting to get really, really worried about the climate of our country, that we cannot talk to people who are different from us. We're losing that ability. So 5 years ago, we started the Winsome Conviction Project, and I'm the co-director. So we're trying to bring together Christians who really disagree on certain issues. It could be politics, it could be theology, but how do you open that communication rather than close it? And then how do you open communication with non-Christians, non-Christian neighbors, people who think very differently?
People at the gym.
What's that?
People at the gym.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, absolutely at the gym.
And there's no need to not be friendly.
Yeah, and gentleness turns away wrath.
Yeah.
That's the Proverbs. So I think we need to speak truth in love. And today, I think there's a whole lot of truth being spoken, but not a whole lot of love between people who disagree with each other. So for sure, we're under attack because Jesus said, blessed are the peacemakers. They are the children of God. And so when you try to do peacemaking, I think that really does open the door for spiritual attack.
And then right back to ways that in your book, how you talk about combating that. But Tim, it's been so wonderful to talk with you. You have such an interesting perspective and a wealth of information. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And I love what you're all doing with your marriage champions.
Oh, well, as always, Marriage Champions, if you'd like to learn more about Tim and his work, you can find us at marriageinitiative.org or marriageresources.org.